Hello.
Hi.
Hello, everyone.
Thanks for joining us. Can we give it up for Kat Gordon once and also for Luvi? That was amazing. I attended this conference for the first time ever last year, and it's insane and surreal to be on the stage right now talking to you guys, especially because as creative directors and kind of at the helm of the creative future of our business, who am I to talk about some of these things? I'm just a mere strategist. But I feel really honored to be here and to share the stage with Tom as well. And we're going to be talking to you today about agency of the future. Do you know what it's like to get a call and to say, you're going to be talking about the agency of the future? One, because I've never ever in my career have been asked what the future of anything is. And I have many opinions about it, but also it has so many different meanings to so many different people. I've talked to my friends about it and they're like, oh, it's about interruptive advertising, or it's about data, or it's about whatever it is. And I'm like, I just really want to talk about what leadership looks like and the things we're doing wrong and what the agency of the future shouldn't look like. So I think you'll kind of hear me chat about some of that today.
Should be good. We are going to do a Q&A, by the way, for like the last 10 minutes of this, because it's often interesting to get really different and new and novel questions. And while we've been talking for quite a long time about what we plan on talking about today, it's much more fascinating if you can scare us with big, sort of horrible questions about the future.
No pressure.
It gives us a big adrenaline rush. I think to start with, I just wanted to talk to you a bit more about your role at the moment. And we both feel slightly fraudulent being here because we're on the creative track. And neither of us have got formal creative titles. I've put on my I'm Creative uniform today to pretend. You haven't even done that. Right?
No, I just put on my Steve Jobs glasses.
So how does your role relate to sort of creativity in the world at the moment?
Yeah, so I'm a group strategy director at DDB, which is one of the sponsors of this event, shameless plug. And they have brought me on to kind of help figure out what digital looks like at DDB. Okay. So as amazing heritage marketers and advertisers, we come up with really great campaigns and things like that. But digital, which I think is kind of similar to what agency of the future conversations are like, how is this supposed to work in modern day advertising? So I've really been there to help kind of foster that and work with a lot of creatives and figure out how we make digital embedded and kind of invisible in the agency.
What are you doing at the moment that you're most excited about?
Yeah, I think actually working with creatives. I think the creative briefing process, I can imagine many of you guys don't like to be given a piece of paper that says, here is the brief. And I've been trying to do away with the brief. And I found that one of the biggest things about how we are going to work in the future, what's better about working in the future, is having better conversations with people versus trying to get everything down and summarize the jobs you're trying to do on an inanimate piece of object and give that to somebody and say, you go away and do that, and I'm going to go away and do this. So the most exciting thing, the biggest place I've seen impact is when strategists and creatives can sit in a room together and just brainstorm, because I think at everyone's core, we are just creative and curious by nature. So pulling that out of each other has been
You like brainstorms?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You like talking about brainstorms.
I'm so bad at brainstorms.
So what about you, Tom?
What's my job like?
What's your job like?
I get asked this quite a lot, and I'm starting to feel quite defensive about it. Because most people think I'm just that annoyingly smug-looking guy on LinkedIn or something. But my main role really is about trying to understand change in the world. And when you start talking about it, it sounds quite pretentious or vague or unhelpful. And you start saying things which sound quite trite, like the world has never changed faster than it does today. But I genuinely believe there's a really big delta between the quality of work that we're doing as an industry and how excited we appear to be and how kind of bold and ambitious we are with actually how we should be feeling. I feel like technology is creating an incredible toolkit for us. Like if you imagine being an architect or an engineer at the time when steel beams were invented or when the elevator was invented, it would probably be the most exciting time to be an architect. If you're a musician and someone invents the keyboard, a whole world of opportunity is created for you. And collectively, because I do mean this like with us all together as part of this, I think we haven't been that excited about digital stuff. And for me, it's less about the technology. It's not about coding. It's about looking at how people now behave in different ways, how their expectations are different. And if you map together what you can do now and what you will be able to do soon in the future, and this sort of wonderful abundance of kind of stuff that we can do, it's kind of my job to try and get us to think about things differently and to get more excited by it. So I write quite a lot of pieces to sort of irritate people, quite honestly, and to try and get us to sort of wake ourselves up a little bit.
Yeah. And how's that irritation been going? Have you found lots of...
I'm very good at being irritated.
Everyone loves, a provocateur on Twitter.
Well, in all honesty, I started to feel a bit vulnerable recently because, I spend a lot of my time saying we can do more, we can do this better. And I think that's valuable, and I'd really like to be able to follow it through by actually making it happen.
Yeah.
And a really big part of my job is actually trying to do that. And I don't know whether I'm just not very good at it, or I don't know whether it's just really, really hard. But especially within the US marketplace, I find it very difficult to do something that's not very gestural. Like it's easy to go and make a chatbot, and it's easy to create a VR experience.
And expensive.
It's expensive, but I just don't think it's particularly, I don't think it's what the world needs. Like if a VR headset can take you to any beach on the planet, I just think it's strange that you want to show off what the British Airways inside of a plane looks like, because no one really wants to see that.
Yeah.
So I try and drive a bit of empathy and creativity and a bit more ambition. And when you get to a certain point where you're very ambitious, it's actually quite hard to accomplish something. And I think now we probably need to get a bit more realistic and bite-sized.
Yeah, and I think when it comes to...
You do this stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
You talk about this stuff. So we I think that we have this situation in our industry where you have people who are at the thought leadership end of things that have the great ideas, and you're like, yes, wouldn't it be great if? And you got me who's like, okay, now I have to actually make that happen.
Yeah.
And what does that look like? Easier said than done, right? And I think that there are a couple of things, a couple of hurdles we need to overcome if we're going to be if agencies are going to exist full stop in the future, because let's be real.
That's a bit bold.
I mean, I think, people are probably feeling it here as you're
Yeah.
seeing more and more clients trying to consolidate the number of agencies they're working with. And as many as I think when you get to your third agency as a person trying to make a career for themselves, and you think, why is this just the same, but with more money or different clients?
Yeah.
And it's often because we need a total shakeup of the way we're doing things now.
Yeah.
We're pretty good, I think, on the doing side of things to do things the same over and over again, even
Yeah.
if they might be titled different things or packaged in different ways. But looking at motivations of why our clients want that difference, or like why agencies want to make that difference, which is monetarily based, those motivations are not always the same,
Yeah.
right?
So if you could, and this is hypothetical and annoying, but if there was a blank sheet, and it's also quite a difficult question.
Yeah.
Sorry about this.
Great.
If you could create like an agency structure or a general environment in which we work that you think would be the best for creating this kind of stuff in the future, what do you think it would look like?
Yeah, so I think for what it looks like is we need to break down silos. There are too many silos in organizations, especially in the traditional agency model. So you see it's the same divide that is strategy, creative, account. Why do we need to play games of telephone with different people to get to what the solution is? It's not efficient, and it's just frustrating for other people who are doing it. So if I had a blank piece of paper, it would literally look like a circle with probably just a bunch of people in it.
Yeah.
And we're starting to see that work. At DDB, we do the flex model, which is that we're really just trying to solve problems in a creative way. And from an agency motivation standpoint, that's difficult sometimes because you have P&Ls and you're trying to make money and you're trying to keep that money within your business. If that's not going to solve a problem for a client, though, that's useless to us. So
Have the clients bought into this? Because quite often we sort of mirror their department.
Yeah, I think we've seen lots of success with that, at We Are Unlimited with McDonald's this year. But even just from, my perspective, I mean, working in digital or social media, my mom doesn't even know what I do usually, and it's been like 10 years since I've been doing it, and so trying to
it's a good job, though, if your parents can't understand it.
I mean, they don't. Yeah, exactly, and they probably
fun.
never will. My dad tried to get me to teach him how to log on to Twitter the other day, but it's another conversation. But yeah, so I think it's really important that we look at breaking down those silos, and not just like internally how we work, but also as it pertains to talent. I think, it's been really interesting to see really, really smart people leave the advertising world because they're like, we're actually fed up with this. We don't think it drives creativity working this way and having these silos and not being heard. I've actually had a friend who's left recently to go join politics, and she was like, she's helping a candidate try to win his congressional seat for New York. And it's huge. And I was like, why'd you do that? She's like, they're facing the same problems we're facing. People don't listen, people want change, people talk about change, and nobody actually takes the measures to create that breaking down of walls. Yeah, but like, I guess as someone who has a lot of insight into what we should be doing or shouldn't be doing, what are you kind of seeing from your level, especially as it pertains to how technology or things like that have kind of helped or not helped?
Yeah, I mean, in all honesty, I don't think I have much insight. I think what I have, which is lucky, is a degree of sort of altitude above it, in that I don't tend to get as stuck into day-to-day stuff.
Lucky.
And that creates like a massive advantage in that you can kind of naively dream, but it also creates a massive disadvantage in that you're kind of removed from like the actual reality. But I think sometimes that's helpful, actually. I think sometimes if you can be so bold as to not be realistic, it makes things easy. The first thing I'd say, and I hope this isn't too controversial, is the entire agency structure doesn't make any sense for 2017. It didn't really make that much sense in 2005. But generally speaking, every time something new comes along, we get a group of people who are sort of newer and younger and cheaper to sort of deal with that new thing on the side. And then when something else new comes along, we create another department.
Yeah.
You know, so in 2001 it was interactive, then in 2004 it was mobile, and in the UK it took a lot longer here. In 2006 it became social. And you now have this sort of ridiculously complicated construct where we have this complexity and then clients have this complexity. And it means you get situations like Unilever where they have 2,000 agencies around the world. And as it happens, it makes sense. But in retrospect, it's unbelievably stupid. Now, we can all maybe agree that that's the case, but the more important question is not, it's crap. It's actually, what do we do about it? And for me, the exciting thing for me is starting to think about other ways to segment this. So if we got all the people in advertising and marketing put together, and we put them in this sort of amorphous blob, how would we then go and slice through that? Again, I have this very naive and probably completely wrong feeling that it would be good to do it based on the time scale over which we expect action to occur. And that's kind of like crazy thinking. But you could have a whole group of people whose job it was to manage performance marketing. So they would be amazing at data, and they'd be great at attribution modeling and lots of stuff I don't really understand. And then you'd have sort of a longer-term agency structure focused on brand building, and they'd have different metrics for success, which would happen over a much longer period of time. And then you'd have people involved with the kind of product and the experience of a brand and sort of NPD and more like customer experience design. And they may be working over a sort of 5 or 10 year program. And I don't think it's necessarily obviously correct or obviously wrong, but the question becomes, how do we get clients to start thinking about it in that way? And I don't know if we can.
Well, I actually think that Unilever is a really good example. They're actually an example of doing the opposite. So they've brought most of their agencies, they've brought most of their creative work in-house. And they're doing that as, kind of more and more, and they're finding the success with that. They're one of the best examples of how that's working. And I think, while I agree with you that it's important to have, people having specialized fields, I think that just creates more silos, right? I mean, you can't expect everybody to be good at everything, but I think the hybrid model of way of working is creating a lot better efficiency. So you should really, as a marketer, have a good understanding of data. Even as a creative, I think some of the best creative partners I've had have strategic brains. I mean, it's just a brain type. It's, the fact that you have it in your title or whatever is just for different reasons. But I think the best creative partners I've worked with have always come to the table being curious about stuff and have said, well, I don't really know if that's true, is that right? And if you think about, at least on the internet, the things that go viral, I mean, I'm just gonna say it, black teens run the internet. And I think that, as we look at advertising and what the makeup of people and talent look like, we're trying to replicate stuff that is doing so well already. When I get a brief or an ask that says, I need another mannequin challenge, or I need a viral, I'm like, I don't know how to give this to you. It's not a thing. but we can get to better ways of working together if we have, more people thinking about more things, I think, versus people thinking about singular things.
Yeah, it does surprise me. This sounds quite dismissive, but when we talk about specialization in our industry, I think we often overthink things. Like if you're a doctor, the reality is that the medicine between nerve cells, and I don't know anything about doctors clearly, bone things, muscle things, it's probably very different physiology, probably. And it makes sense for them to specialize. Whereas generally speaking, like social media is kind of just media today. You pretty much buy it. The dynamics of it are not vastly different. This idea that you need to have a social media strategist and a mobile strategist and a retail strategist and this endless specialization, I actually think that most of these jobs are probably better done by a generalist who actually just has a fuller understanding of the whole toolkit.
Yeah, I think especially for me when I was trying to go through getting a job or figuring things out, somebody said to me once, he's like, you clearly can't be put in a box. And I took that as a bad thing for most of my career, because I was like,
that's like an amazing.
You're not, well, because it's never presented to you as that. It's like, oh, well, I don't know where to place you. I don't know what role I have for you. But when you start telling people, well, actually out of the box thinkers come up with better stuff because you can. And you do touch upon many things. I think there's always going to be a need for some of the deep specialisms that we have. But I think, being able to build those in and embed them better and hire talent that has a better set of diverse thinking that comes from places of, intuition is a real thing. Mannequin Challenge was like a 16-year-old girl in Florida. On Fleek, like some of the things that we have in culture were invented by teenagers, you know what I mean? And what are we trying to do with creative anyway? We're trying to impact culture, and if we're not doing that, then what's the point?
So going back to that diversity topic, what do you think as an industry we can be doing more of?
Yeah.
You just looked at me in stunned silence.
Okay.
Expect that question?
Like, I know. Well, being a brown woman and getting that question from, you, it's like, I'm like, I don't know how you want me to answer that. I guess, I think looking at diversity on the whole, I think we try to create, this is what we're doing to bring more diversity to the table. And we have to have those things, actual procedures and methods for getting better talent in. But really, if you start breaking down silos in general, start talking to more people, start trusting that, just because somebody doesn't have certain things on their resume that they can't bring to the table better things than you can. I think it's a good place to start. And I think that's all a part of Agency of the Future. I'd love to see more females in leadership, and I'd love to see, not just females, but all kinds of people that we have no representation for right now. And that kind of inclusion leads to better work.
It's kind of crazy that that doesn't happen.
Yeah, it's nuts that it's 2017, we're still talking about it. But I think if you think about just the ways that what we first started on, this wanting to change versus what you actually do to change, those things are massively different, and there's still a big, big gap to be filled.
Yeah, I worry quite a lot that people do a lot more talking about these things.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of gestures of the kind of pretense that something is important without real action behind it.
Yeah.
So whether it's like getting moms back in the office and being able to get them to work around the timetable that works for them, or supporting people that come from very different backgrounds, everything feels like it's a kind of initiative to do it, and therefore you can get some kind of credit for talking about it, when these things often should just be the natural way that people behave, it seems. So.
Yeah, always easier said than done.
Yeah.
Should we maybe take some questions to see
Yes.
how these guys feel about it? There's a box, yes there is.
I've got a really bad back, by the way, so if I'm sitting strangely, that's what's going on.
I'm making him throw it because I don't want any liability.
Who would like to ask us any question about anything? Oh my God, that's really far. Okay. Can we do this one first? Because honestly, my back's really bad.
Is this on? Is it working? Thank you. I have a quick question. We're talking about lip service, right, to diversity and changing the way that we behave as agencies. And I think that that's really a cornerstone of a lot of the problems we have, because we talk about the hiring, we talk about the teams. What are ways that you see we can start doing once you have those people on your teams? What do you have this team of amazingly diverse people and thinkers? How do you keep that team? How do you nourish that culture and push through some of these changes that we talk about? Because I think it's really easy to look at a piece of paper and say, well, I have 20% of this and 30% of this and these people on these different levels, but how do you take it the step further that makes it really work?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and it's such a difficult one to answer, but I think if I can start with just like 2 anecdotes. When I was at my last agency, I was working every single weekend and just like killing myself to get stuff done because I was trying to prove myself and whatnot. And the immigrant rally was happening, and I said to our CEO that I need to go take a break from this for a second, and he was just like, why? And I was like, hello, like, what do you mean, why? And then I had to just be like, well, because my roommate was deported before we had DACA in college, and, you know, I'm brown, and I have a family of immigrants, and this is important to me. And he was just very dismissive of it. And then I remember another time when I had people on my team, like, who were, you know, women of color. One was Mexican and one was Korean, and I could tell they were just like visibly upset by some of the things that were happening in politics these days. And I'm just gonna say, you know, like, you bring your whole self to work if you're a person of color or not even of color. There's so many ways that, you know, people have their experiences, whether you're in the LGBTQ community, et cetera. And we spent 10 minutes. I saw them kind of just being upset about stuff, and I was just like, are you okay? And they were like, we're not. We sat in a room, and the 3 of us cried together for like an hour. And I think creating safe spaces at work, allowing people to bring their whole self to work, and being more mindful that we're not just, and none of you guys are either, we're not just people who are robots. And it's not always easy to remember that, but I try to do it with the people I manage, and I try to have them teach me as well, and it's kind of a process.
It's quite a difficult question to approach quickly. In short, I think it has to come from the heart. I know it sounds strange, but I feel like everything is quite gestural, and it's done for the pretense of it rather than because it comes from the heart, and it's because people mean it, and it's because people genuinely think they will get to a better place. Like, it's very clear when you look at any studies that having diverse talent is extremely helpful. So people just have to really believe in it and take it to heart and work around it and bring out the diversity in people. Like, I often feel like in the hiring process that we try and get people to sort of fit into a structure. And actually every leader's job should just be to bring out the very best in every single person, even if it's not particularly helpful, because I think you get to a better place that way. I mean, there's lots of other things that you can then talk about to do with creating a culture of collaboration. And again, we don't have much time. I think it would be amazing if we could do a better job of genuine leadership in this industry at the moment. And it'd be great if we could manage people more by accomplishment relative to a goal rather than how hard they work or where they work or the environment in which they work. Because I think when people are working towards something, like, you just get the best out of everyone. That's quite a general, fluffy answer, I know, but it's hard when you've got a countdown time in front of you.
I just want to add one thing to that, because we talk a lot about like sponsors and mentors. Sally Krawcheck of Ellevest and a lot of other women have been talking about what it means to be a sponsor. And I think anyone that's in a creative leadership position, a sponsor is someone who talks about you when you're not in the room, because that is when the largest decisions are made about your career, right? So it's just having that, making sure that you can help people on your team just as a starting point once they get there, succeed, and not just give them mentorship of how they should go is going to be really big for all of us.
Should we do one more question? While that's sort of finding its way.
I think there's one over there. Right.
There
Want to stand up? Yeah. There you go.
Hi. I think one of the reasons that the silos have been created in the current agency model is a need for efficiency because we're so time pressed. Part of that has to do with email has become a main part of everyone's job. How do you think that the agency of the future can actually overcome this? It's a crutch, you know, we need email, but it's maybe too much email, and we need an email about an email, and then we need a meeting email, and how
5 meetings.
Are there ways that you have seen or heard of that agencies are overcoming this time suck and allowing people to actually work with each other more instead of separately?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a really great question. I think I'll quickly answer this because I know we're running out of time, but I think it's one that we can always talk about offline too. There's a difference between silos and also specialisms and whatever. I think when you start leaving people out of the room because it's your job to do X, then all of a sudden you're saying it's not your job to do X. And servicing clients and thinking about business and having creativity is important across the board. I've asked my account people, I'm like, bring me into the room, I want to hear about client feedback directly. And it really helps kind of stop having extra meetings, because I've heard it already. So we don't need to do it again.
A couple of things. I'm amazed at how bureaucratic America is. I'm amazed at how much people do stuff to cover their ass rather than to make a difference. I'm staggered that we work in the communications industry and we seem to be completely crap at talking to each other. I think everyone just needs some basic training. Like, when is a good time to make a phone call? When is a good time to have a meeting? It's not boring to have an agenda before a meeting. Is it wise to do this via email? Like, I get CC'd on pretty much every single email that exists in our whole building. It doesn't make any sense. So I think we just need to get much better at striving to make a difference and to do great work and to give a shit. And actually, all the bureaucracy should be the least important thing in that. And we should try and do as little stuff as possible when it comes to managing this stuff. You know, you can use things like Slack, but lots of people don't know how to use it properly. But I think we just need a bit more of a hustle on. Just a bit more like, let's not have a call to talk about a call, to talk about a meeting, to talk about another meeting. Let's just barge into someone's office and go, this is a great idea, let's just do it.
Let's just be more human about it.
We're probably going to get taken off because we've got like a red thing
That's it,
flashing.
yeah.
But we're going to be here
Yeah.
like, for quite a long time. So if you want to talk about this or anything else, just like grab us and we'll talk about it.
Yeah, we can talk for ages, clearly.
Thank you very much, everyone.